Okay, guys, I did it. I read all 20 books. For better or worse, that's what we've done. And we're going to discuss the project, my experience. I've decided to do some superlatives, what I think's going to win, and then we're going to respond to the winners. I am not going to review all 20 of these books. I have reviewed them at one point or another on this channel, and I will try to have links to all those reviews down below if you want to know more of my thoughts on these books. Also, this is part of another fun collaboration, so there will be a playlist for that listed down below as well, with a bunch of other people reading categories. Everyone had their own threshold. I was originally only going to read the top 10, and then mental health got me here. And so I do want to say, this is going to show a lot of averageness for me and my tastes, a lot of books that maybe I wouldn't have read, but on a whole, I don't regret doing this project. And I actually do think it shows in some of the stats I looked at for myself in terms of like the cost-benefit analysis for myself. This fall has been a whirlwind for me. Stressed about a new job I'm hoping to get, and I've kind of gotten, but like there was that whole thing. We're moving and figuring out our current place and our future place and all of that. Got new kittens. There have been health ups and downs. My brain's been all over the place. So reading a lot of accessible fantasy, sometimes a lot of short books, getting through things quickly because I had this momentum, doing that all fall has been actually, I think, really good for me, even if it hasn't landed with some of my favorites of all times. I think it has landed, though, with memorable experiences overall. So yeah, so I guess we'll first get into some of the stats that I looked at for my reading experience doing this. So there were 20 books, and I made a little pie chart over here of books that I would have DNF'd if I wasn't doing this project, books that I would not have found, and I'm happy that I read, like happy surprises. Like there's no way I would have read these if it weren't for this project. I'm really glad I did. And then just, these are Goodreads. Books that I might have read with or without this project, books that I don't feel like have made my life better or worse because I read them. Like I didn't want to DNF them, they were fine. So here's a little pie chart for that. And for the most part, I'm really happy that at least the DNFs are balanced by the surprises. And this is for all 20. And then when you look at it for the top 10, for the most part, the fine books, the good books, they're like, yeah, I'm not mad I read them. I don't know if like they're amazing, but they're definitely palatable, accessible. Those are the ones that stayed. A lot of the books that I would have DNF'd didn't make it to the top 10, which I think is kind of interesting. Now, because I didn't DNF anything, my average rating for this reading project was 3.425, which is astronomically low for me. There were so many 2 to 2.5 star reads for me. So many. Like, oh, and that's because though those would be books that I didn't want to pick up or I would have DNF'd. So it's not surprising, and none of this is surprising. Do I expect the Popularity Contest Goodreads Choice Awards to give me the fantasy books I want to read? No, I actually use Goodreads to help me figure out what I might want to read in categories that I am not well versed in, because I kind of do want to like dip my toes in the popular side of the pool. And then, you know, if I want to keep digging, find where I fit in the subgenre space. Like that's, I think, where Goodreads is most beneficial for the average person. I think if it's your subgenre, it's not as fulfilling. At least that's my theory in this project. All right, so let's talk about the books though. Like what did this represent in the fantasy section? And so I broke down, I had 2 pie charts to show you. One is I looked at how many standalones did we have, how many first in a series did we have, and how many sequels did we have. And I was kind of wibbly wobbly on this, but here's for all 20. Half of them are standalones, and then 25% were first and 25% were sequels. Some of this is I'm including prequels as sequels, and so because we did have 2 prequel sequels, and then some of it is like, is Tress a sequel or a standalone? I had to make a judgment call there. Is Fragile Threads of Power a first in a series or a sequel? But this is approximately the breakdown. And what's interesting is how many of those standalones go away when we get to the top 10. When we get to the top 10, we are primarily in sequel territory with a couple first books in series and 2 standalones. And even if we aren't, you know, completely all defining sequels and first books the same way, 80% of these are in series, which I do think is representative of fantasy as a genre. The majority of the things we as fantasy readers read are series, and those tend to be popular because they keep having buy-in. Even if they don't always win, it makes sense, I think, that the top 10 would be formed of that. But boy, the fact that like we went from 50% standalones to like 20% is striking, and I think you see this when I look at the subgenre breakdown, because we did have a good representation of a wide range of fantasy. I don't know if necessarily the fantasy that like a fantasy reader would read, but we have contemporary fantasy, we have what I'm calling like secondary world fantasy, and cozy fantasy, and historical fantasy. Those are the four I grouped them into. Obviously, there are so many ways to subgenre delineate these, but this is what felt good to me. And when you look at the top 20, this is the breakdown. And then when we go to the 10, if you notice, we lose all of the historical fantasy. And what I put into historical fantasy were like the Greek retellings, the Victory City, anything that was truly like very historical and had gods and magic and things like that in it, because I didn't know what else to do with it. So yeah, I think I kind of like that there was a good mix of contemporary fantasy and secondary world, and then a good representation of cozy, which has definitely been having its moment in popularity. So if we're trying to measure something here, I think we're doing okay. But I just thought it was really interesting how when you're looking at the top 20, what happens with the top 10. And I think what that does mean is we're having a broader top 20, but it would be nice if that top 20 maybe did encapsulate more of what we have been reading as like a genre space. Like maybe we have too many of those Greek retellings. Could be a thing. Maybe those are better served in a different subgenre. Maybe general fiction, maybe historical. Maybe we just don't need this many. Maybe. Maybe only one Greek retelling in the entirety of Goodreads choice a year. Maybe. So that's kind of the breakdown. And instead of kind of going through and listing my ranking for all 20 of these books, I made superlatives. We have 8 superlatives, and then we will end with me picking what I think are the top 4. And I'm going to try and predict which one will win. Maybe I'll even try and rank them. And then we're going to go look and we're going to see what happened on Goodreads and if I was close to right, because they actually do give you the numbers so you can really see first through fourth and all of that. And, you know, see how close things were to making the short list versus the long list. Have a little discussion. I don't know what that will be like because I'm filming this before it's been posted. So, but the first superlative we'll talk about, just to get it out of the way, obviously everyone's really interested, in my opinion, on the best Greek retelling of the Goodreads Choice Awards. So here you are, you have this nice graphic in front of you where we have Atalanta. The story of Atalanta, who goes, on a journey with Jason for the Golden Fleece. There's this running contest for her marriage. It's a whole thing. She's raised by Artemis. We have Stoneblind, a retelling of Medusa, the Gorgon that is killed by Perseus because Athena is really misplacing her anger. And then we have Clytemnestra, which, honestly, my favorite of these threes. I'm just going to get that out of the way right here. If you've been watching my channel, you know how much I really find Atalanta and Stoneblind to be mediocre. Clytemnestra, I think, brought a lot of rage and revenge energy that I was feeling. If you don't know, she is a woman that is a princess of Sparta, and she becomes a queen. And so part of my joy of this story was I forgot a lot of her role in legends and myths, so there was a part of me that's like, I knew I could look it up, but I was on the edge of my seat about like what tragedy would befall her next, and boy, there are many. So I'm going to keep it vague, but she's a princess of Sparta. She is wronged countless times. Spartan women are just culturally more active and more warlike, so she isn't not like other girls. Like, I think you can fall into that trope with a lot of Greek retellings. Like, she's actually pretty normal for a Spartan woman. She's just a princess, which that's her abnormality, is she is royalty. She is the sister of Helen, so Helen of Troy. We definitely get some Iliad references in here. My one gripe is that it's a little long, but of the Greek retellings that I read, and maybe it's because I read this one after a book I really didn't like, this one's the winner. The other two I actually don't think do anything that unique. I don't think they have an interesting voice, and I actually was rooting for Clytemnestra as a character, not just as this legendary retelling thing that I was consuming. Next up, let's do Secret Society. What has the best Secret Society? Because we had a couple books that had secret societies. We have Venko, which is this coven of witches in the Americas. This is the story of a girl and her grandmother, and they get to go on this adventure to find the last witch with the spoon. It is heartwarming. It is a fun little quest. It's about finding community. We've got Hellbent, the sequel to Ninth House, where the whole premise is that Alex Stern has to keep the societies at Yale in check, these secret magical societies. And then we have Inkblood Sister Scribe, which is a society of people who know that magic comes from books and control the magic in the books and how they are written and how they are used. And I haven't actually thought of a winner for this one. I just really liked all of these books. And I mean, I don't think Hellbent wins based off the quality of the secret society-ness of the story. I do think Venko, it plays the strongest role in terms of society. So I think I'm going to give it to Venko, but I actually think it's pretty much almost a tie between that and Inkblood Sister Scribe, just so we're clear. Next up, let's go into best use of flashbacks, which is one of our favorite storytelling devices across literature, some to better effect than others. So here we have The Witch King, Fragile Threads of Power, and Hellbent. So I'm not gonna lie, a lot of these I think kind of highlighted how you need to be a particularly good author to pull this off. I think Hellbent wins because that's the book I had the most fun with and I wasn't as jarred with the flashbacks. I'm not certain the flashbacks were necessary. Actually, if I wanted to edit that book down, it's the part I would have taken out. But Witch King and Fragile Threads of Power were actively harmed for me in my reading experiences by the flashbacks. I don't think they brought a lot of intrigue, and if we were going to do the emotional work we were doing in Fragile Threads of Power, I didn't want it to be the flashback format. So, not a strong win, but a win nonetheless to Hellbent. Next up, let's talk about Gothic mysteries. We had a fair few what I would consider Gothic mysteries, and so we've got Starling House, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, and The Unmaking of June Farrow. I don't think it's surprising that two of these three, a lot of people would say, are these fantasy books? And that's a fair question. I will say for me, the only one that truly doesn't belong here is The Unmaking of June Farrow. That's a science fiction Gothic suspense mystery. I will die on that hill kicking and screaming. It's not even that important, but it is not a fantasy book. I totally get why people say The Last Tale of the Flower Bride is not a fantasy book, but for me, it feels fantasy enough. It feels fantasy enough. It's allowed to be there. I can't explain it. The Azure part of it's so whimsical. It's just like the childlike wonder and fantasy of that works for me. And then Starling House, no one's going to disagree there. That one's, I mean, if anything, that one's almost allowed to be in the horror category based off some of the unsettlingness of it all. Now, which one wins for me? This is The Last Tale of Flower Bride. That's my favorite. And even though, like I said, maybe it's a stretch to call it a fantasy, it felt like a fantasy book to me, and genres sometimes are just vibes, right? So, yeah, contradicting myself, but I'm also just gonna hold firm on these superlatives that only matter to me. Next up, let's talk about some series qualities. So, the best setup book. I'm not even talking about first book in a series, because there were a lot of first books in the series, as we saw from the pie chart earlier on. I'm talking about a book that set up a series and makes you want to pick up the next book the minute it comes out. And so for this, I have Swordcatcher, The Will of the Many, Fragile Threads of Power, and The Book That Wouldn't Burn. These are the four. And right off the back, I don't think Fragile Threads of Power has a chance. For me, it actively made me not want to pick up the next book. I don't think it does enough in its book to warrant its existence in terms of, like, the stakes within it. It's one thing to be a setup book. It's another to be a setup book where nothing really happens. And for that reason, another book that cannot win this category is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I really liked it. I do want to read the next book in the series, but for how long it is, could have had some more internal catharsis. So that leaves The Will of the Many versus The Book That Wouldn't Burn, and I think they are actually both really good at being intriguing books that make you want to read the next one. For me, it's The Will of the Many, hands down. I legitimately went to the author's website to figure out when is the next book coming out. I needed to know, I want it. It's not a favorite of all time per se, but like, I have questions and I need answers. Whereas The Book That Wouldn't Burn, I could see for a lot of people needing the next book. I think it actually does a good job of having a contained story and also opening a door for a future part of the thought experiment. I would have preferred it as a standalone, and because there are a lot of things in the narrative that aren't to my taste, I won't be continuing on, but I think it is better at being a setup book than the other ones, even though I like Swordcatcher more and things like that. And continuing on with judging series, let's give the superlative win for the best sequel on this list. So we've got 2 prequels and a sequel, because that's just how this worked out. But we got Day of Fallen Night, Hellbent, and Bookshops and Bone Dust. And for me, this is obviously Hellbent because the other 2 are only okay for me. I actually don't like A Day of Fallen Night. I have many videos where I discuss how much I don't enjoy that book, how I wouldn't have finished that book if it weren't for this project, etc., etc. I don't need to keep going on to that here, but I don't like it. It's too long. It didn't do anything for me. Bookshops and Bone Dust I liked but didn't love. I don't think it's doing anything wrong, but I do think that in this world, I want this author to play with a different character. I'm kind of done following this character. I don't mind cozy Hallmark movie fantasy, but I need it to be something else. I need it to have a little bit more bite, if that makes sense. All right, 2 more superlative categories. We've got best narrative voice. And what I mean by this is that, like, if you're talking about this book to someone, you might mention the narrative framing of this piece. So we've got Tress in the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. We have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And we have Amina El-Sarafi, or The Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi. And we have Victory City. Now, I like all of these. I think all of these are pretty good. I think Tress and Victory City are my favorites of the 4. Victory City I wanted to mention because it's someone who's commenting on translating a work that was found in a piece of clay by this larger-than-life character it's a very meta, postmodern type of historical literary fantasy, and I find that interesting, the way the author will interject. And then there was this section about X, and we took it out because it wasn't relevant, and the commentary on translation, I thought that was fun. I don't think that's enough to win this category, but I thought that was enjoyable. We have The Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi, where you literally have Amina telling her story to the scribe, and sometimes there are scribe interjections. I think that's also cool, and there is also sort of a thing you learn in the narrative framework that I think is fun. And then Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, it's journal entries, and it's quite entertaining having that narrative framework for it. And Trust in the Emerald Sea is Hoyd, and is told in a very, I'm telling you a fairy tale, moral storytelling voice. And I do think, for me, the winner is probably Trust in the Emerald Sea, even though I think it hindered my enjoyment more so than embellished it, but compared to these others, that's like my only high, strong 4 in comparison. Like, on a meta level, I enjoy Victory City, but I also question whether Victory City is fantasy enough for the Goodreads Choice Awards sort of thing. And our last superlative, before we get into reacting to winners and all of that, is what is the best book for book lovers? Because it would not be the Goodreads Choice Awards if we didn't have books about loving books. And so, we have Inkblood Sister Scribe, Bookshops and Bone Dust, and The Book That Wouldn't Burn. Inkblood Sister Scribe, literally magic in books. You use blood, you write words, that book does magic. How much more can we love books than that? People are discussing library collections. It's a whole thing. Bookshops and Bone Dust, we are rebuilding a bookstore. We are literally recommending the perfect book to people. We are giving books as gifts. That's pretty big. The Book That Wouldn't Burn is in a library, and it spends a lot of time in that library. We have a character making a book. We have a character who loves to read. These are all strong contenders for different reasons, but I do think I'm giving this to Bookshops and Bone Dust because literally we all are that person who's like, yes, I want you to read this book and tell me what you think afterwards. And I do think that's where that book shined, and I wish that had been its focal point for its entirety. So, before I go, see if Goodreads has finally given me results to look at. What do I think the top 4 are going to be, and in order? I think number 4 is going to be Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. She's very popular, but this book came out kind of late, it's kind of long, and it's not quite Shadowhunter, which is, I think, to its benefit, but maybe diehard fans won't love it as much. And I also think there is a lot of crossover appeal between people who like Cassandra Clare and Leigh Bardugo. And Leigh Bardugo I'm going to mention later on. But that's my, internal logic there. I think Starling House is number 3. I could see this going higher, but I'm just putting it here because I don't want it to. I think it's good. I just don't think it's amazing. It's fine. Of all the contemporary fantasy, it was my least favorite. Well, maybe not my least favorite, if we're including The Unmaking of June Farrow, but I loved Venko and Inkblood Sister Scribe so much more than this book. I love The Last Tale of Flower Bride more than this book. In terms of contemporary, gothic, etc., this was not my favorite of all of those. And that leaves our top 2. And I don't know if I'm going to be right. I didn't vote this way, but I think number 2 is going to be Hellbent. That's the book I voted for. I think the things it has going for it is it's Leigh Bardugo. Leigh Bardugo's history of winning the Goodreads Choice Award is unmatched, which is why I'm hesitant to put her at number 2. I think she should win, but it's a sequel, and it's a contentious series. It's more popular on Goodreads than it is like the bookish internet, but it's still not widely loved. And then again, we have to hope that these are people who haven't read anything else and are just going off name recognition to boost her numbers, because I think that's more likely to happen than the people who have read the majority of the list. So I think that means, I think Tress is getting it. Brandon Sanderson is very popular, and this book was a hit success for him. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if Leigh Bardugo won, because I think in the Goodreads space, Leigh Bardugo is more popular. And I know this firsthand when I did my young adult series. So I'm going to go open my laptop and let's see what we've got. I should have stuck with my guts, guys. Oh, I was so right. But it's at least competitive. Hellbent is the winner. I'm telling you guys, the Leigh Bardugo, she's got power. 75,000 votes. But at almost 60,000 votes, Tress and the Emerald Sea is number 2. So I was not far off. I was not right about my number 3 and number 4, though. Number 3 is A Day for Fallen Night. I forget how popular that author is. I just don't like that book. I just don't get it. Good on Encyclopedia of Fairies. Like, that is actually, the top numbers 2 through 6 are basically all within spitting distance of each other. So, Day of Fallen Night, Encyclopedia of Fairies, Bookshops and Bone Dust, and Fragile Threads of Power, they're all between 37 and 39,000 votes. So that's not surprising to me. Those are for, like, fantasy readers who read fantasy or are on the bookish internet. That's what has been buzzy this year. I know. Those are buzzy books. Those are covers I have seen. And then from the 27 to 30,000... we got Starling House, we have Swordcatcher, we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. Also kind of makes sense, especially because I think if Starling House and Swordcatcher had come out in the spring, they would have had a better shot. I'm actually questioning why Starling House didn't come out earlier, because it's not a fall book. Like, it's gothic, so it works for that, but, like, its internal setting as the book is not fall. I think it's actually spring or summer. Or it's one of those books that starts in one of those and it takes place over a period of time. All right, so that's looking there. And yes, The Unmaking of June Farrow is the last place of this top 10. I'm feeling validated. So let's look at, wow, there's a huge drop. Well, okay, granted, the huge drop makes sense. They compound the votes. So if you got voted for in round 1, those votes get added to round 2. So it makes sense that the drop is from 25,000 votes to like 9,000 votes. So I'm going to try not to be completely shocked by that. But Stone Blind would have been next. The Book That Wouldn't Burn, Inkblood Sister Scribe, and Clytemnestra. I feel bad for The Will of the Many. That only got like 5,000 votes. Like, the same as Atalanta. Like, really? And then, last place went to Venko, which is sad because I do think that's, if I had to, like, I didn't make a superlative for it, but, like, most surprising was probably Venko. I wasn't going to read it. Like, when I was only going to do the top 10, I only read it because someone in my Discord reminded me that it was the author of a book I also liked, and then people brought up in my comments that it's, like, an Indigenous Canadian author. I'm like, well, I should, broaden my horizons. Let's just see if this book works out. And it was super fun. Witch King got more votes than it, probably from name recognition alone. So yeah, this kind of worked out. I should have stuck to my guts with Hellbent. Oh, I'm so annoyed. I could edit this and fix it, but you guys see it here. I was wrong. Whatever. That's interesting. It's very interesting. Like, I mean, it's very predictable. It's incredibly predictable. This was not a bad project. I don't know if I'll have the spoons to do it again ever, but I had fun. Hopefully this video was interesting. Like I said, very mixed bag of a project. I did it for science. Yes, I should have DNF'd more. I don't have regrets. I don't. But let me know how you feel about this category. What were your hits? If you were doing superlatives, what would you do? You can make them tongue-in-cheek or actual superlatives. Do what you will. And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a bunny, because it was Hellbent. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.